There are a lot of dangers when it comes to a redesign, and it affects an audience in a very specific way, but there are some things that designers can do to avoid tanking a character's legacy, if you will. So there's some ways that we could future-proof a character. Last week, posted a video about Donkey Kong's new design. The main purpose of that video was more to go over how certain design decisions can influence a design. I wanted to give like very precise, actionable things that you could try in your own character design. Some people got really mad, like, how dare you suggest I should like this new design? This channel isn't about just accepting the slop that Nintendo throws at us. I'm not a toxically positive Nintendo fanboy. And so some people just thought I would feel the same way about Shrek. And you have no idea how toxic I can truly be.
Addy.
A character can represent a lot of things. A brand, a franchise, a game mechanic, right? And all those things can evolve. Branding shifts to attract new markets. Character's story might lead them to a place where they have to look different. Mechanics can change in a game, and sometimes we can optimize the character to change things about them. Like in the case of Donkey Kong, we're trying to make him look a little bit more expressive. Now, some characters are better at withstanding those changes. We would call that a more flexible design. Like Sonic would be a great example of that. Sonic can jump between formats like a video game, pixel art, or a cartoon, or to like a Funko Pop, and you can still recognize the character. Even like Demon Sonic is recognizable as Sonic, even though it's demented. Like these both read as Sonic, but in different ways. This isn't the worst thing in the world. You can see why somebody would think like that's like serviceable. These oval eyes make him look like kind of like a snake, though. That's really weird. And so you'd say that character is very flexible, whereas you get a lot of, we'll go back to Funko Pops, a lot of Funko Pops based on media franchises where the leading person is like an actor. The character may not have like anything unique about their costume or anything, and so you read these labels and you're like, who the fuck is that? It doesn't look anything like the person. It's too reliant on the subtle details of that person's phenotype. Characters like Sonic, they have a very strong mental schema. And a mental schema is basically your brain's template for what something should look like. When you look at a new image of Sonic, you can compare it to that schema and be like, that's Sonic. But when you see a version that's close but not quite right, your brain compares it to that internal scheme and goes, this is fucked up. With horrors like these, we just can't have 10-year-olds watching. I'm sorry. He deviates a little bit too far from the mental schema, and not just because he looks disturbing, but because he's kind of nailing down some aspects of Sonic that are just too far for us to accept, and it creeps us out. This phenomenon is called a schema violation. It's when a design breaks from what we expect, and even in small ways, it creates cognitive dissonance, the little itchy discomfort when things don't line up. You get a lot of that in the comments of my DK video where people are going over, this is DK, this is not DK, he's a cool guy, he's this or that, and they're debating over whether or not this DK falls in line with that mental schema, or does it violate it. So when this happens, schema violation, or when cognitive dissonance sets in, a lot of things can happen. We'll just say you can accept or you can reject. So obviously, when we're redesigning a character, we want more people to be accepting over rejecting. If you're getting a lot of people rejecting, which the Shrek thing seems to be pretty unanimous, you're doing something wrong there, obviously. As a character designer, what do? Do we just say, I don't care if you reject it. Take it, buddy. Shrek is love. Shrek is life. He's going in raw. Character design is communication. And if you're not communicating correctly, you are doing a poor job as a character designer. I think people are justified in feeling this cognitive dissonance, and I think they're justified in rejecting a character. I mean, imagine you had a family member that showed up with a different nose, or they started talking like out of the side of their mouth, like those like weird TikTok girls. I'd look one up, but I'm a little bit afraid of like what I would find. I don't like it. Who's wearing my wife's skin? And while doing a little bit of research for this topic, I learned of the capgrass delusion. You think that somebody in your family or somebody you know has been replaced with an imposter. And obviously that's not reality. Except here we're not dealing with somebody you know. It's even worse. It's somebody you don't know. So you were delusional all along. Even with all that distress, do we never redesign our characters? Do they need to be stuck the way they are? Sometimes the character gets better from a redesign. I mean, original Miyamoto DK had no tie. Should we just never redesign a character? Original Mario's weird looking. Redesigns can be necessary. We might just want to forego any amount of discomfort that it could bring, or at least mitigate it in some way. Now, I think what's interesting is the backlash with this one is pretty unanimous. Pretty much everybody hates Shrek. Whereas the Donkey Kong is kind of like, there's a heated debate about it, but I think people are a little bit more willing to accept it. And I think the main reason is cartoon, deformed, or abstract characters are better at withstanding design changes than realistic ones. And the reason for that is when we're engaging with a piece of fiction, we all try to suspend our disbelief. We know that what we're looking at isn't real. We suspend our knowledge of knowing that it's fake just so that we can enjoy it. Cartoon or abstract characters help a lot with that. We know that they're not trying to represent reality seriously, and so we don't take them seriously. And that can be used in a way to subvert the expectation where you watch a cartoon but then it hits you in the gut with really strong feelings that you weren't expecting, like Grave of the Fireflies. You lower your guard around a cartoon character. DK's redesign, it might show a little bit more hair on the body, but he's still a stylized gorilla who wears a tie. And as long as his core design elements, his tie, his little muzzle, if his general face shape is in the same position, we're more willing to buy in. Cartoon characters, they can squash and stretch more, emote more wildly before our schema gets shattered. They can do more extreme stuff before we start saying, that is not Donkey Kong. They can experience more redesigns because they're an abstract concept in our head. They're not nailed down in reality. Whereas Shrek has always aimed for realism. Everyone's given like normal human proportions. Shrek runs at like a slow jog. He doesn't just like zip around. And that's kind of what made Shrek's movies so great. Some of the comedy comes from this juxtaposition of reality with the nonsensical. Fiona comes in and does like a big kung fu stunt, and that feels more extreme because we're set in a realistic setting. The world is already so grounded. But yeah, realism comes at a cost. When your characters look and move realistically, the margin of error shrinks. In Toy Story, there is this shot, and it's like the most unnatural shit I've ever seen. It just looks so stilted and weird, and I notice it every time. The movement of characters has to obey physics in some way. Facial features have to stay consistent, because if you change them too much, the illusion collapses. Like, you can do this in a 2D character, but imagine Shrek's mouth opening up like a giant snake. And so that's exactly kind of what's happening with Shrek, is even his animation in that trailer is a little bit more animated. It's a little bit more overacty, which is something that you get more from like the cartoony Illumination movies. And that might just be the changing of the guard. The animators in now weren't there 15 years ago animating Shrek. They have a different preference to the way that they work. What are the reasons that they felt that the Shrek stuff was justified? Well, they might have wanted to move his eyes closer together to make him more appealing. He's got that new daughter. I have a vague suspicion that they're trying to make a spin-off and make her the main focus. He may be made to be more in line with her design. His neck fat is reduced, which makes rigging easier and animating easier. I don't really know what the nose is for, why they changed that. It just makes him look a little bit more sharp. Personally, I don't think that this is the right way to go, but I can still appreciate the redesigns for DK. And you know, a lot of people were talking about like the bean mouthification or the homogenization of like the new Donkey Kong. I do think that is a risk. I will agree. I do think everything becoming cute is not just like everything looking the same, but it also has a problem with denying reality. And I think some of the best stuff comes out of a respect for truth and reality. Reality isn't pretty. People, not everyone is attractive. You know, the king's not like conventionally attractive. He's conventionally attractive on purpose. Or Shrek. I mean, the whole point of the thing is don't judge a book by his cover. He's supposed to look scary. So that's what real life is like. And so yeah, there is a real danger with moving into like a cutesy direction with everything. So if we're designing your own characters and you're thinking, what if I want to make this future proof? How do I revisit this down the line? The key thing, I think, is to start kind of figuring out what you want to do now, right at the beginning. Not all of us are doing a Shrek 5, very successful franchise that we're working on that's going to need a redesign. But I think a lot of us really wish to have that. We want to make something that matters and that people love. Maybe that's just me. There's no wrong answer. Realism, cartooning, they both have their trade-offs. Now, me personally, I prefer cartoon. I can exaggerate more, play with the shapes on a more abstract level, and that's all without having to get better at drawing. And you get more of that flexible schema like we were talking about earlier. But if you want to go with something more realistic, I would suggest drawing your attention away from some of the immutable characteristics like someone's face and going with something like a mask. I mean, how many people have played Spider-Man and we don't really care as long as the costume looks right? Of course, if we're talking for a realistic animated style, if you have the means, then you really don't want to be changing the facial structure of your main character between titles, because people's bone structure in real life doesn't really change that much, and people are gonna notice.